Welcome to How I Rewired My Life, a chapter-wise story of mastering motivation and momentum. This isn't just an audiobook, it's a journey. It's a journey that takes you from feeling stuck, distracted, and overwhelmed, to finding clarity, reigniting purpose, and building unstoppable momentum. Inspired by Thibaut Moires's powerful guide, Master Your Motivation. This story brings those life-changing lessons to life through the eyes of someone just like you. Someone who once struggled with procrastination, self-doubt, and burnout, but who discovered that motivation isn't a mystery, it's a muscle. Each chapter unfolds like a moment in time, a choice made, a mindset shifted, a habit formed. You'll walk with our main character, Clara, as she transforms her mindset, declutters her life, rewires her inner dialogue, and builds emotional resilience, not with brute force, but with compassion and clarity. Whether you're at the beginning of your own transformation or just looking for the next spark to keep going, this audiobook is your companion, so take a deep breath, lean in, and get ready. Because the story you're about to hear isn't just Clara's, it might just be yours. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Declutter. Eliminate unpleasant tasks. In a small town nestled between hills, lived a young woman named Clara who constantly felt overwhelmed. Every morning she awoke with a to-do list so long it made her chest tighten. Despite her tireless efforts, she ended most days exhausted, with little to show for it but a sense of guilt and confusion. One rainy afternoon, she stumbled upon an old journal tucked into her bookshelf, one titled Master Your Motivation. With curiosity sparked, Clara turned to a chapter titled Declutter. The words within invited her into a quiet space of reflection. She was guided to perform a simple exercise to make 2 columns. In the first, she listed all the unpleasant tasks she regularly performed: mundane chores, unnecessary meetings, draining social obligations. As she wrote, the page grew heavy with ink and truth. The second column was more empowering. Clara was prompted to consider what she could do about these burdens. Could she delegate? Reduce time spent? Could she even eliminate them? Some tasks could be reframed like washing dishes, now seen as moments of mindfulness, rather than just drudgery. Through this simple act of decluttering, Clara began to breathe easier. It wasn't just her calendar that had been filled with noise, it was her mind. By shedding the mental weight of needless obligation, she found the first flicker of clarity. And so, with a clearer mind and a lighter spirit, Clara took her first step toward reclaiming her motivation, not by doing more, but by letting go. Chapter 2. Declutter. Evaluate daily activities. Clara's journey toward clarity had only just begun. The relief she felt from eliminating draining tasks gave her the courage to go deeper. The next morning, the chapter continued. Evaluate everything you own. Start with your clothes. Intrigued, Clara looked around her small room closets, bursting with forgotten fashion, drawers packed with what-ifs and just-in-cases. She decided to play along. One by one, she pulled her clothes out and laid them across the floor like fallen leaves. Holding each item, she asked herself, would I buy this again today? Many were met with a quiet but firm no. It wasn't just about the clothes, it was about choices she had outgrown. The process didn't stop at her wardrobe. Her mind wandered to her daily habits, scrolling endlessly on her phone, attending social functions out of obligation, even clinging to outdated goals. They were all like cluttered garments that no longer fit. Clara began to understand. Motivation wasn't something she had to create out of thin air. It lived beneath the mess, and by evaluating what filled her days both in her home and her head. She was slowly peeling back the layers to find it. As the floor cleared and her space felt lighter, she whispered to herself, I didn't need more motivation. I just needed less noise. Chapter 3. Declutter. Simplify your physical and mental space. As Clara's days grew lighter, with less emotional clutter and fewer meaningless tasks, she began to notice something else. Her physical environment whispered chaos. It happened on a quiet afternoon when she sat down to write and stared at her desk. Crumpled papers, random post-its, tangled chargers, unopened mail-it, all seemed to smother her concentration. She turned back to the journal. The next chapter read, Declutter your desk, spoke to her simply but with power. A messy desk often mirrors a cluttered mind. So Clara stood up, rolled up her sleeves, and began. She swept away what didn't serve her focus, distracting gadgets, old receipts, even decorative clutter that no longer sparked anything inside. In their place, she left only what she needed, her notebook, her laptop, a single pen. The space felt sacred now, like an invitation to do meaningful work. As her desk cleared, so did her thoughts. Notifications silenced, unnecessary tabs closed, mental cobwebs swept away. She discovered that motivation doesn't always need a battle cry sometimes. It's awakened through silence and space every morning thereafter. Clara made cleaning her desk the first ritual of her day. It wasn't just about tidiness, it was her way of saying, now it's time to begin. Chapter 4. Focus. Assess your productivity. Clara's world was quieter now. Fewer distractions, fewer unnecessary tasks, a clearer space. But clarity of space did not yet mean clarity of purpose. She found herself still ending days, feeling drained, and yet she couldn't point to what she had really accomplished. That evening, the next chapter greeted her with a piercing question. Are you productive? ... or just busy? Clara felt the words echo. She thought of her day answering emails, checking messages, bouncing from one half-done task to another. She had been moving, yes, but not moving forward. The book spoke of a common illusion mistaking motion for progress. It told her that feeling overwhelmed was not always a matter of too much to do, but rather too little focus. Being busy had become her armor against the discomfort of choosing what truly mattered. So, Clara paused. She wrote down everything she had done that day. Then, she circled only the tasks that truly contributed to her goals. The page looked almost empty. But instead of guilt, Clara felt a strange sense of power. This is the turning point, she thought. I don't have to be busy to feel worthy. I just have to be deliberate. That night, she went to bed with a new commitment not to do more, but to do what matters most. Chapter 5. Focus, identify, and remove distractions. Clara was beginning to taste the power of focus, but it was fleeting. Each time she tried to immerse herself in a task that mattered, she found her attention stolen by her phone, a notification, the irresistible pull of a browser tab promising something urgent. Then she turned the page in her journal and found the next challenge: destroy distraction. It sounded dramatic, but the question it posed was simple. What one thing can I do right now to boost my motivation? Clara closed her eyes. The answer came quietly. Turn off the noise. She began with her phone, turning off all non-essential notifications. Then she went through her computer, closing tabs that didn't align with her goals. She decluttered her digital world, just as she had her desk. But then came resistance. She noticed an urge to check messages, a discomfort in silence. The book warned her of this resistance was not a flaw, but a clue. A clue pointing to fear, avoidance, or uncertainty. Clara stared at the screen and whispered, "I see you." Instead of escaping the discomfort, she sat with it. And gradually, her mind stopped fidgeting. A deep focus began to take its place. She had discovered a truth many never realize. Distraction isn't just digitalize emotional, and two, truly. Focus, you must face what you're avoiding. Asterisk chapter 6. Focus. Concentrate on one. Cool? Via optimizing your environment, asterisk Clara had begun mastering the art of protecting her attention. But focus is fragile when your environment doesn't support it. The next chapter offered a powerful insight. You are the product of your environment. Clara paused. She reflected on how often she slipped into habits, not because she chose them, but because they were normal in her surroundings. Constant multitasking at work, a gossip in friend circles, and digital noise encouraged by everyone around her. The book urged her to take a bold step, change her environment to match her focus. So Clara began to look around, really look. Her desk, once tidy, now became sacred. Home screen was decluttered. She started spending time with people who talked about dreams instead of drama. More importantly, Clara chose one goal, just one that truly mattered. And she aligned her environment to that goal. Reading more, building her writing habit, saying no to things that pulled her in other directions. In doing so, she discovered that motivation thrives where alignment lives. It wasn't about discipline alone. It was about making her world pull her forward instead of dragging her down. By concentrating on a single goal and curating a world that nurtured it, Clara was no longer fighting for motivation. She was flowing with it. Chapter 7. Reignite. Discover what truly motivates you. Asterisk. Clara had become more focused, more deliberate, and less distracted. But some days, her sparks still flickered. She showed up to her goals, but her energy felt hollow, like she was walking a path paved by someone else. That's when the next chapter whispered a vital truth. You don't lack motivation. You may just be chasing the wrong goals. Clara paused. She had always thought her problem was laziness or lack of discipline, but the journal encouraged her to go deeper. Kay asked, "Are your goals truly yours? Are they rooted in your values or in expectations? Tode, aligned with your strengths?" Clara grabbed her notebook and began writing not a to-do list, but a truth list. She looked at each of her goals and asked, "Does this excite me? Does it reflect who I really am?" Some answers were difficult. Some goals she held tightly were born from fear, others from societal pressure. But through that radical honesty, a new fire began to kindle. She saw that true motivation is not forced, it's pulled from within. And that fire only burns when your goals are aligned with your soul. Clara smiled as she wrote down her real aspirations. It's no longer filtered through fear or performance. She had reignited her journey not with a louder alarm clock or a stricter schedule, but with purpose. Asterisk chapter 8. Reignite. Give up what doesn't bring fulfillment. Asterisk Clara had begun discovering what truly moved her heart. But as she turned the next page, she was faced with a new question, not about what to pursue, but about what to let go. What if your unhappiness isn't about doing too little, but doing too much of what doesn't fulfill you? The chapter invited her to conduct a bold experiment. She made a list of her daily routines, morning scrolls through social media, endless browsing on YouTube, idle small talk, and unnecessary errands. At first, They seemed harmless, just background noise. But when she looked closely, Clara saw the pattern. These things weren't neutral. They were draining her. The journal called for honesty. Clara was asked to mark which of these things actually brought her joy, growth, or peace. Many didn't. Some even made her feel worse, so she made a new decision, not just to add fulfilling things, but to remove what didn't serve her anymore. She deleted certain apps. She gently declined invitations that didn't align with her new path. She gave herself permission to not do things that didn't feel right without guilt, and in doing so, she realized something powerful. Letting go is not loss. It is liberation. Clara was no longer filling her days to feel accomplished. She was choosing them with intention. And with every no to the unfulfilling, she was saying yes to a more meaningful life. Chapter 9. Reignite. Create. A compelling vision for the future. With distractions minimized and her truest motivations rising to the surface, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Space to dream. But dreams, as the next chapter reminded her, don't thrive in vague hope. They thrive in vision. The journal invited her to sit quietly and ask, what do I truly want from life? Not what she should want, not what others expect, but what pulls her forward. Clara closed her eyes and let her mind wander, not to goals, but to feelings. What made her feel alive? What made her feel her? A tree imagined writing stories in sunlit rooms. She pictured sharing her words with people who needed them. She saw a simpler, more meaningful rhythm to life. And the more she leaned into those images, the more real they became. The book was clear. Willpower is useful, but it's limited. What sustains long-term motivation is not pressure, but pull. So Clara sketched her vision not just in words, but in symbols, moods, colors. She didn't need to know the exact path yet. What mattered was that the path now had a direction. That night, she taped her vision board beside her desk, not as a demand, but as a compass. And for the first time in a long time, Clara felt pulled by the future instead of pushed by the past. Chapter 10. Acknowledge. Celebrate small wins. Clara had vision. She had motivation. But some days, the journey still felt heavy, especially when the results didn't come fast enough. Then came a soft reminder from the next chapter. Acknowledge your daily accomplishments. The words felt warm, kind, necessary. Clara realized she was still carrying the weight of unrealistic expectations. Her to-do lists were ambitious, 10 items long, demanding perfection. And each night, she'd finish 8. But feel like she failed. The book offered a shift. What if you chose just 3 meaningful tasks a day? 3 things within your control. 3 things you could actually complete. She gave it a try. The next morning, Clara picked 3 simple but important tasks. Write 1 page, go for a walk, and call her mentor. By evening, all 3 were done. And for the first time in a long while, she felt complete. She realized that small wins weren't less than they were fuel. They built momentum. They rewired her brain to see progress, not pressure. Clara made it a ritual. Every morning, 3 tasks. Every night, a quiet celebration. And slowly, her self-trust returned. Because motivation isn't just about vision or action. It's about recognizing that every step, no matter how small, is part of the climb. Chapter 11. Acknowledge. Reflect. On daily achievements. Clara's new rhythm was in motion. 3 small tasks a day, each one a stepping stone. But the next lesson wasn't about doing more. It was about feeling what she'd done. The chapter opened with a simple but powerful invitation. Celebrate your wins. Every single one. Struck Clara how often she brushed off her progress. calling it no big deal. But the journal reminded her, what gets rewarded gets repeated. So she began a ritual. Each time she completed a task, she would pause, not to rush into the next thing, but to say 2 quiet words. Good job. Sometimes it meant crossing it off her list with a smile. Other times it meant letting herself enjoy a small reward, like an episode of her favorite show or a few pages of a book. At night, she'd reflect on the day, not with judgment, but with pride. I did what I said I would. And slowly, something beautiful happened. Her inner critic softened. Her confidence grew. She didn't just know she was progressing. She felt it. Clara learned that reflection wasn't just about evaluation. It was about connection to effort, to growth, to self-compassion. Each day no longer felt like a blur of activity. It became a collection of victories, small but real. And that, she realized, was where true motivation begins, not in the finish line, but in learning to value every step of the way. Chapter 12. Acknowledge, cultivate gratitude. By now, Clara had learned to recognize her progress and celebrate her wins. But the next lesson brought a deeper kind of nourishment, one that fed her spirit as much as her motivation. It began with music. The journal suggested a simple, yet profound practice. Find songs that touch your heart. Listen as you reflect on what you're grateful for. So one morning, Clara brewed tea, played a gentle melody that reminded her of childhood, and sat down with a blank page. At first her list was simple: warm sunlight, her favorite pen, a good night's sleep. But soon it deepened. She wrote about friends who had stood by her, moments of clarity in recent weeks, and the quiet joy of showing up for herself again. As the music flowed, so did emotion. Gratitude didn't just lift her mood, it anchored her. The journal explained that gratitude was not just a feeling, it was a lens, a way to reframe setbacks as lessons, a way to see life not through what's missing, but through what's meaningful. Clara made it a daily ritual. 5 minutes, one song, a heart wide open. And with each passing day, she realized, the more she gave thanks, the more she noticed things to be thankful for. Motivation no longer came only from goals. It came from grace. Chapter 13. Commit. Aligned self-talk with goals. Clara had learned how to declutter her space, focus her attention, reignite her purpose, and reflect with gratitude. But even with all those changes, there was still a quiet voice inside her that sometimes whispered, "You're not doing enough. You'll never finish this. Who are you to try?" The next chapter didn't offer tactics. It offered a mirror. Change your self-talk. It said, Clara realized, her biggest obstacle wasn't outside, it was inside her head. For years, her inner dialogue had been critical, cautious, and afraid. But now, she was invited to speak to herself like she would to a friend. The journal prompted her to notice her language. Was it harsh or kind, doubting or empowering? So she began writing down her recurring thoughts and rewriting them. I'll never finish this became, I'm making consistent progress. I'm not good enough became, I'm learning, and that makes me stronger. At first it felt awkward, but repetition became rhythm, and rhythm became belief. Each day, Clara reminded herself that her words were not just commentary, they were commands. They shaped her energy, shaped her future. In learning to speak to herself with encouragement and clarity, she discovered a deeper truth. The story you tell yourself becomes the life you live. Chapter 14. Commit, build, Emotional resilience asterisk Clara's self-talk had softened. She was learning to cheer herself on, but even with a kinder voice inside her, there were still days when things went wrong, plans unraveled, emotions stormed, progress stalled, and on those days, she needed something deeper than motivation. The next chapter gently offered it, develop self-compassion. It described self-compassion not as weakness, but as resilience, a quiet strength, the kind that bends like a reed in the wind rather than snapping under pressure. Clara realized that for most of her life, she had been her own harshest critic, believing that if she was tough on herself, she'd stay strong. But now, she understood, true strength isn't in beating yourself up. It's in lifting yourself up. She practiced new responses. When she stumbled, instead of saying, "I failed," she whispered, "It's okay. Everyone stumbles." When plans changed, instead of panicking, she told herself, "I can adapt." This emotional flexibility became her superpower. It allowed her to try new things, to risk more, to grow because, even if she failed, she knew she could catch herself with kindness. Over time, Clara's inner world became a safe place not because it was perfect, but because it was forgiving. And that, she discovered, was the heart of emotional resilience, not in avoiding the fall, but in trusting you'll rise again, gently. Chapter 15. Commit, strengthen inner resolve. Clara had learned to speak to herself with kindness, to be gentle in failure, and gracious in reflection. But the final chapter didn't introduce something new. It deepened what she had already begun. Strengthen your resolve, it read. Through the daily practice of self-compassion, it wasn't about motivational speeches or grand declarations. It was about consistency, about training the mind to default to care instead of criticism. The book challenged Clara to a 7-day experiment. Wear a simple rubber band on her wrist. Every time she noticed self-criticism, she would gently snap it, not as punishment, but as awareness. Then she would replace the harsh thought with a kind one. I'm doing my best. Everyone struggles. I'm proud of how I keep showing up. Day by day, Clara noticed a shift. Not that the doubts stopped, but they were no longer in control. Her inner voice had become more like a coach than a critic. This small, visible ritual began building something profound. Inner resolve, not willpower born from pressure, but strength born from self-acceptance. Clara Key realized the greatest commitment she could ever make wasn't to a goal or a routine or a schedule. It was to herself, to be her own ally, her own source of steadiness, to stand tall, even in uncertainty, because she had built a home within. Asterisk.